the next part of my real estate journey is actually what I feel like is my good karma for all the years that I worked in that position, because now I work with Seth O'Byrne, and we are one of the #1 teams in San Diego County. And it has been the best. Like, I was just ready for a change. I was starting to interview for other companies. And, you know, I was getting, you know, this back and forth and like, oh, we're not sure yet, but we're gonna let you know. Wouldn't hear back from people. And then, you know, one day, like one of my friends that I worked with, we became friends because we worked together. She came around, like she worked on the other side of the wall and I worked on the other side, and she came around the wall or the cubicle and she's like, Alina, that agent that throws really fun parties is hiring. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, but I was just ready for a change. I was like, I don't know who this guy is. Like, you know, he probably isn't as successful as we were, but I wasn't even thinking about that. I was like, I just need a change, you know? And so I did recognize his name, and I knew that the preferred lender that I worked with, I knew that he knew him too. So I called my preferred lender, Scott Evans, and I was like, hey, you know, Seth is hiring. I was like, can you give him a call and just like put in a good word for me? So he called him, and then eventually Seth and I set up a time to talk, and Seth and I ended up talking for an hour, which at the time I was like, oh my gosh, that's a long time to talk to somebody for an hour. But now I know Seth and I have worked with him for the past 10 years. Like that's pretty normal, you know? So we had a great conversation. He was like a really cool guy. And, we ended up having an interview in person, but I think we had already made the decision for me to work with him. So, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I was working for the #1 real estate agent in the country, and the amount of volume that we were doing was like, I mean, I can't even remember, but it was probably like thousands because we were doing condo conversions. And so it was just like, I was used to this really, really high pace and doing a lot of work, and I felt like I was underpaid and overworked. And so I actually told him, I was like, I want to have my weekends, you know? I don't want to be doing open houses on the weekends. Like I want to chill. I want to do my photography on the weekends, like, you know, quality of life. And like, he's all about the quality of life, you know, still is. So, you know, that's how I went into this interview, was telling him that I wanted to work less and I didn't want to work the weekends and I didn't want to do open houses. It's like, yay, but please hire me. And it actually worked out, and obviously has been working out because we just actually celebrated our 10-year anniversary, work anniversary. And I'm sorry, I also realized I was talking really fast. So if there's anybody from another country or something, I'm like, oh gosh, I might have to slow down a little bit, but this is what happens when I start talking. So I started working with Seth, and it was such a shift. It was like night and day, you know, like quality of life, like, oh, you need a mental health day, take a mental health day. Like my boss is out skateboarding and surfing, and like, you know, I think one of the first weekends that, or even before I started working with him, but it was like when I was about to start working with him, it was Cinco de Mayo weekend. And so my introduction to Seth was Cinco de Mayo weekend 10 years ago. So for anybody that knows Seth, like, or is a friend of Seth's, like knows that we were raging, you know, like I was in my 20s, or he was in his 20s too, or almost 30, something like that. So, you know, I saw a side of Seth that is the fun party side of Seth pretty early on. And so, yeah, and the thing about Seth is like, he put so much trust in me from the beginning. He made me make decisions. He trusted what I had to say, and that's how we started rolling, and that's how we still roll. But like at the time, like I was always second guessing myself. I was afraid of fucking up. I was afraid of messing up, because at my last job, like it was bad if I messed something up. Like there was no compassion. There was just, you know, we're human and we mess up. But you know, those were really difficult moments. So to go to this other complete opposite side where it's like somebody that's like understanding and, you know, appreciates the work that I do and values me, like that was a huge shift for me. And so that kind of was like, I attribute a lot of my success now, or how I've grown so much as a person, to Seth, because he instilled that in me. Like it was like training at first. I wasn't used to that, you know, like, and so that's just always how it's been with Seth. And that first year that I worked with him, because when I left my last job, they, you know, I remember very specifically the words that they said, because it was never easy for anybody to leave. It was always like a big deal. And so I was always afraid to leave, because they always instilled this fear that like, you know, you're gonna leave and the real estate market is very volatile and you're going to work for an agent that you know, is not going to be able to afford you. And so I remember when I left, my manager at the time said, he was like, you're going to leave this job and you're going to go work for an agent that has had a few good months, meaning he's saved up some money, he's had a few good months, he can hire somebody right now, and then he's not gonna be able to afford you, and then you're not gonna have a job. So, come December of 2012, which is the first year that I started working with Seth, we had 10 escrows that month. And none of them had closed yet, and they were scheduled to close like in January. And it was already Christmas, and Seth had called me and he was like, I'm so sorry, but I can't pay you like this pay period. I can pay you like double for the next, you know, pay it on or when these escrows close, but these escrows have to close and then I'll be able to pay you. At the time it was fine, like, and he had just been so great, and so it wasn't even like a big deal at all. And he also told me, he was like, you can have the work computer too. And before he hired me, he asked me what kind of computer I needed for my photography. And so he actually got me the Mac that I needed to edit my photos. So I was like at work, and then after work, I would stay in the office and I would edit my photos, you know, for a few hours. So he gave me ownership of the work computer and said that he would pay me, you know, once those escrows closed. And, you know, we closed 10 escrows that month, and we're like, oh my gosh, we just need to like duplicate that every single year, or every single month, I mean. And so sure enough, like every single year, like we kept growing and we kept growing and we kept growing until we were like #1 in San Diego County. And so since then, like we've grown so much. Like I've grown a ton, he's grown a ton, the company has grown a ton. And I always joke around and I call him like the boss man, because he's not really like a boss. Like he just like, he treats me more as like his partner and his equal. And so that's been my real estate journey for the past, 17 years. And then the past 10 years with Seth. I did end up taking a sabbatical from 2016 to 2018. I did not know I was going to go back and work with Seth in 2018, but that is a time in my life, and another video where I will be sharing more about my travel journey, photography, but mostly about my travels. Because my traveling is like a huge part of my life. I love traveling. I love connecting with people, and it just fills my cup when I do those things for myself. Walking around a new city, photographing it, like taking in all of the things that are happening that are new and different. Experiencing the kindness of strangers, It's just a really cool feeling, and I'm so grateful, I'm so happy that I made the decision to do that. There was some roadblocks and some difficulties, but I'll get into that into another video where I will share more of my travel experiences, where I've gone, and what that journey was like for me and how that's influenced how I live today. So once again, thank you. My name is Alina Mendoza. You can follow me on Instagram as well, at Alina Mendoza. Thanks everybody. Bye.